It's 1 o'clock, and now I've turned on my mic, and we're back in work session. And we're going to pick up with item 4 on our published agenda, Economic and Workforce Update for Washington County. And Brandon Schrader is participating via Zoom.
Yes, he is. Hi, folks. Elizabeth Mazzara Myers, Chair and Board of Commissioners, here today as Chief of Staff for Catherine Harrington. And Brandon, I think, should be zoomed in. I just want to give you a little context before he gets started on his presentation. Brandon and I started corresponding back in November or December about doing, he recently had gotten Washington County into his portfolio at the Employment Department and wanted to pick up where the previous analyst left off, doing presentations on a regular basis to the board. We had planned on doing one in March on workforce, and then COVID happened. And so what we've done is we've updated it. He'll be doing a presentation today to give you sort of a baseline and update on what was happening up through March of 2020. And then he's working with Jack, who's here, for another presentation in 4 to 6 weeks that will give you a look at Washington County, the economic impact of COVID-19 on Washington County. So with that, I'll go ahead and grab the clicker, which I should have done before. Oh, I don't have to click.
Say advance the slide.
Okay, so then Brandon, I guess Kathy will let you introduce yourself.
Oops.
Brandon, you should be ready to speak. You're unmuted.
And should he be on camera as well or just his presentation? Is that better? Okay, should he be able to?
Is anybody on Zoom within the auditorium? Oh, then we have some other technical difficulty.
Brandon, are you able to hear us? Can you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay! So Brandon, take it away. The floor is yours.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen for the presentation, or?
Sure, if you want to share your screen, then you can just forward it yourself.
Okay. Oh, it actually says that I can't while other participants are sharing, so.
So
Brandon, we have you all prepared and ready with your PowerPoint. And so you should be able to see it from your screen.
And when you need Kathy to advance the slide, she can do that.
Okay. So hello, my name is Brandon Schrader. I'm the new workforce analyst economist from the Oregon Employment Department for Washington County. I'm stepping into the role that Emily Starbuck had for several years. As a recent transplant from Ohio, where I was pursuing my grad degree, I'm excited to be out here in beautiful Oregon. So to understand the ramifications of COVID-19 on Washington County's economy, I thought I would start by discussing how the local economy has recovered since the Great Recession from about 2010 to 2020. Then after that, to discuss some of our most recent data from March that was released earlier today. And then finally talk about our newest leading economic indicator, unemployment insurance claims by county, and then look at some of the demographic information. Can we move to the next slide, please? So for the last decade or so, Washington County has consistently had an unemployment rate below that of both Oregon and the Portland metro area. It decreased from about 9.3% in February of 2010 to under 3% in February of 2020. 2.9% is significant. This is a record low number for Washington County, and for the last 2 months, we've had the second lowest unemployment rate in the entire state, just behind Benton County. Give or take a little bit, this means that in February of 2020, there were less than 10,000 people in Washington County unemployed. Could we go to the next slide, please? Inversely, employment opportunities have been tremendous in Washington County. Employment growth from the end of the Great Recession to February of this year have increased by 32%. This equates to about 70,000 jobs added to Washington County's business community. Put another way, this equates to about 21% of all of the employment growth that Washington County has had in Oregon over that same time period. It's really been a leader. It outpaced the Portland Metro's employment growth by about 5%, and then the Oregon State average by about 10%. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this employment growth that Washington County has experienced has been felt across nearly every industry. Those top 4 industries, professional and business services, manufacturing, education, health services, and leisure and hospitality, account for about 78% of the employment growth that was experienced over the last decade. Just as a note though, some of the decline that you're seeing with wholesale trade and some of the immense growth in the professional and business services industry stems from code changes. So several businesses in Washington County redefined their primary purpose as no longer wholesale trade and transitioned into professional and business services. So again, some of that growth that you're seeing is actually trading off with the wholesale trade industry. And this growth that we've witnessed over the last decade has really come to define Washington County's business community today. Can we go to the next slide, please? So if you look at the breakdown of what Washington County's business community looks like in the status quo, again, those fastest growing industries, professional and business services, manufacturing, education, and health services, as well as trade, transportation, and utilities, which is going to include retail and wholesale trade, make up about 2/3 of all employment in Washington County. If you tack on the next biggest industry, leisure and hospitality, that's about 3/4 of all the employment that Washington County has. Can we go to the next slide, please? So between record low unemployment rates and increasing opportunities for employment in Washington County, there's been a tremendous amount of wage growth as well. Between 2008 to 2018, and after adjusting for inflation, wages increased by about $11,000 during that time frame, which is about 18% or 1.8% per year. Washington County has the highest average wages in Oregon, and the only county that had a higher dollar increase during that same time frame was Morrow County. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to say the least, the expansion over the last decade or so has been kind to Washington County, and the business community has really had an opportunity to expand. But in concert, and as more people have been interested in moving into Washington County, the cost of housing has increased as well. In fact, the cost of housing has outpaced wage gains. So after adjusting for inflation from early 2011 to early 2017, the average cost of rent increased by just shy of $500 or 42%. So 7% a year on average between 2011 and 2017. Far outpacing again that 1.8% increase in real wages that Washington County experienced from 2008 to 2018. The good news, however, is that again, after adjusting for inflation from 2017 and as we entered 2020, rental prices in Washington County have appeared to stabilize and actually begin to decrease, providing a good opportunity for wages to catch up. Could we go to the next slide, please? The other caveat to the wage gains that Washington County has experienced is that they're significantly stratified by the industry in our county. So the average person working in manufacturing makes nearly 5 times as much as someone who's in the leisure and hospitality industry, and almost 3 times as much as someone who's working in the retail trade industry. And of course, some of this stems from the high-tech manufacturing that's commonplace here in Washington County. But it is just something to note when examining the average wages by county, breaking it out by industry as well. Could we go to the next slide, please? All that being said, poverty rates in Washington County have steadily declined for the last 4 or 5 years. And much like the unemployment rate, Washington County has had a lower poverty rate than both the United States as well as Oregon. From 2014, the poverty rate was at about 12.8% and declined to just under 9%. You'll kind of notice that there's a small bump between 2017 going to 2018. Looking at the data itself, that bump is actually within the margin of error for those numbers. So it's probably well within the ballpark and stayed about the same between 2017 and 2018. So in summation, the life cycle for Washington County between the end of the Great Recession and as we've entered the pandemic with COVID-19, there's been a tremendous amount of employment growth, wage gains, increase in housing, and a decrease in both poverty rates and the unemployment rate here in Washington County. Could we go to the next slide, please? So what has our data from March of this year noticed? So Washington County's unemployment rate remained essentially unchanged in March of 2020. Went from our record low of about 2.9% to 3.1% here in Washington County, and it remained flat at 3.3% for both Oregon and the Portland metro area. Again, some of this has to do with when our data is collected. So our unemployment and employment figure surveys are collected on the week that includes the 12th of every month. So our data was collected the week prior, before most of the public health initiatives went into place for Washington County as well as the state of Oregon. So our figures in the future will probably capture more of the increase that we're expecting for the unemployment rate. Could we go to the next slide, please? Perhaps a better figure is the employment levels for March 2020 for Washington County. So between February and March, there was a net change of total non-farm employment of about 500 jobs. While on the surface, this might seem like a net positive, the reality is that Washington County typically, before you adjust for seasonality, gains about 1,500 jobs between that month as the spring season picks up and more businesses are going to have spring sales and things of that nature. So typically, industries like retail trade and leisure and hospitality see an increase of jobs. The reality, however, is both of those industry sectors saw a decline, and explains the reason that after adjusting for seasonality, it looks like Washington County actually lost about 700 jobs from February to March of this year. And our data will become more reflective of the current state of COVID-19 and its impact on the greater economy as time goes on and our surveys are able to catch up. Can we go to the next slide, please? That being said, to compensate for the velocity of the pandemic and the impact on its economy, the Oregon Employment Department has started to utilize a new leading economic indicator, processed unemployment insurance claims per week. So basically, this is the number of unemployment claims that have been both filed and processed by the Oregon Employment Department. And there is a pretty important distinction in that there have been about 297,000 unemployment claims filed with the Oregon Employment Department. And as we'll see on the next slide, there have been about 170,000 of those that have been processed. So the numbers that I'll be discussing in these final slides are fluid and will likely change over time. However, for that unemployment claim statistic for Washington County for the 6 months leading up to the crisis, from about mid-September to mid-March, there was an average of 374 claims with very little variability, a low of about 300 and a high of about 460. Could we go to the next slide, please? When looking at the state of a whole, again, as I mentioned, there have been about 169,369 claims that have been filed and processed for the state of Oregon. Of those claims, 74,447 have been filed and processed for the Portland Tri-County area. This represents about 44% of all of the processed claims. And it's difficult to talk about this because on the one hand, the sheer number of people applying for unemployment benefits is devastating. On the other, when you consider the percentage that the Portland Tri-County area makes up of total Oregon employment, about 51%, we're actually seeing less of the distribution than maybe you would expect. Can we go to the next slide, please? So for Washington County in particular, in the last month, so from March 2015 to the March 15th of 2020 to April 11th of 2020, 19,913 claims have been filed and processed. Again, this number is much likely higher as we haven't processed all of our claims. That being said, the figure that we have right now is more than all of the unemployment claims from the total of 2019. So again, that's very difficult to look at when you consider the human impact. In any case, could we go to the next slide, please? So when asking the question, where are these unemployment claims coming from in terms of industry, it matches pretty well, Washington County matches pretty well with national and statewide trends. The top industries like accommodation and food service, healthcare and social assistance, individuals no longer being able to get those elective surgeries, as well as retail trade. Other services, which isn't going to include auto repair mechanics, laundromats, areas like that, construction, administrative and waste services, which includes sectors such as temp agencies, have all been hit significantly hard. And those top 7 industries account for about 80% of all the unemployment claims. Again, that being said, every industry has seen an increase in the number of unemployment claims here in Washington County. Can we go to the next slide, please? To add some perspective when comparing Washington County to the rest of the state, our regional economist, Amy, created a new statistic. It's unemployment claims per 100 employed residents. So for Oregon, for instance, there have been 8.4 UI claims per 100 employed residents in the state of Oregon. In the Portland metro area, it's at 7.7. And Washington County actually has the smallest number of unemployment claimants per 100 employed residents at 6.3 claims. So again, a difficult number to look at, but compared to the other counties in our area, we're doing a little bit better. We move on to the next slide. For the rest of the state, the coastal counties have been severely impacted, definitely the hardest hit so far with the data that we have right now. A lot of this probably goes back to their industry makeup, having a strong retail trade industry, as well as accommodation, leisure, recreation, and so forth. The hardest hit county, Lincoln County, had 14.6 claims per 100 employed residents. 3 of the top 5 are all coastal counties. And every coastal county is in the top 13 hardest hit counties in terms of UI claims per 100 employed residents. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So the next question that this tends to beg is, who are the individuals, who are the Oregonians that are applying for unemployment and benefits. And there are three characteristics that we noticed when going through the data. The first of which is that people who have a high school education or less are vastly overrepresented in our UI claims data. So while they make up about a third of the total working age population, they're about 58% of our UI claimants. And then as you increase in terms of educational attainment, so those with an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, they're underrepresented. Again, all categories are impacted, but it seems to disproportionately affect those who have less education. Can we move to the next slide, please? The next factor is that the people applying for unemployment insurance, according to our data, tend to be younger. So individuals who are 20 to 24 years old are about on par what you would expect, comparing the percent of the total labor force that they make up to the number of UI claims that we've processed for them. However, those who are 25 to 34 are overrepresented, whereas they make up about 23% of our total labor force here in Oregon. They're about 30% of all UI claimants. And then once you get to the age range of 45 and over, again, they're underrepresented. So as of right now with our data, it seems that those who are older have been less affected than those who are in the younger age range. And then could we go to the next slide, please? And then lastly, and perhaps most strikingly, when we break out our unemployment claims versus by the share of employment by average annual industry wage, those who make $35,000 or less make up about 18% of Oregon's total employment, but as of right now, are about 41% of our UI claimants. It's about on par for those with 30,000 who make $30,000 to $50,000. And then again, once you get to $50,000 and above, those categories are underrepresented in terms of UI claims. So in summation, the individuals that we're seeing right now who are filing for UI claims tend to have less education, are younger, and are in lower income wage earning industries. Can we go to the next slide, please? If you have any questions, there's my information. Christian Kaler is the economist from Multnomah County, and then Amy is our regional economist for the Portland Tri-County area.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Hey, Brendan, this is Roy Rogers. I'm a little confused. Wow, we're getting a lot of feedback. I'm a little confused about the definition that you were talking about in regard to professional business services coming out of the wholesale industry. What was that about? I didn't track that at all.
Okay, sorry about that. So basically what I was saying is that businesses report to us their primary function. From, I believe that slide was from 2009 to 2019. There was a significant increase in professional and business services. So a few business or several businesses in the wholesale trade industry redefine their primary function as revolving more around professional and business services as opposed to wholesale trade, which is part of the reason that there was such a high increase in professional and business services during that period, and why, if you look back at that slide, that there was a decrease in the wholesale trade industry.
I understood that. You said that,
Okay.
that same thing earlier. Give me an example. I'm trying to understand who would be a wholesale one year and business services the next. What would that look like?
I can't get into too many specifics just due to confidentiality, but potentially businesses that maybe manufacture that are split up, for instance. So on the one hand, maybe their headquarters or where the main CEO and other business staff is located in Washington County, but at the same time, let's say that they, manufacture clothing or shoes or whatever the case may be. And instead of defining their primary business focus as producing those wholesale goods. Instead, since their headquarters is located in Washington County, and they're leading their organization, it's more of a professional and business service according to the NAICS code.
Thank you. What you're doing is you're parsing, or they're parsing out their business operations, and they're saying that our management function is now a business service, and instead of being part of the manufacturing plant or the wholesale plant, they're saying that's separate. So I get what they're doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Brandon, Jerry Woolley. My question is more, are there pockets of higher unemployment within our own county? So do you have any of these demographics by city or unincorporated area?
In regards to the unemployment claims,
Yes.
no, the most detailed information that I have right now is broken out at the county level and then the county by industry level.
Okay.
Any other commissioners' questions? Well, thank you, Brandon. I have a question for you. I really appreciate seeing this information. It's stunning how quickly things have turned. I don't know if we'll end up calling this recession the COVID-19 recession or something else. On the slide, one of your very last slides, the UI claimants highly concentrated in lower wage categories. So with the, well, let's see, I can't remember which of the federal bills it was now that provided for the stimulus check for families.
That's part of the PPP.
Okay. Many people who had already submitted their tax claims for the year ended up getting those checks through direct deposit. But some folks, either who have not filed their taxes yet, and that deadline was extended to at least July 15th, maybe it's August, I've lost sight of that, July 15th, yep. I don't remember all the particulars with regard to the thresholds by which people have to submit their taxes to the IRS, but seeing this chart here with the $35,000 or under, and seeing that category accounts for 41% of the unemployment insurance claims, I was wondering if, as part of Oregon's employment department, as people submit their or follow up on their unemployment insurance, if they're also provided with that handy link of all the flood of information we've all been experiencing the last 4 weeks, if there's a handy place for them to go in order to submit the alternate path. I know there is an alternate path.
So Brandon, I'll jump in here first. So you had to file your 2018 taxes in order to qualify automatically. So if they filed taxes in the 2018 calendar year, they would have gotten taxes automatically. And Brandon, I'll let you speak to the additional $600. I don't know what that level was, that folks got are getting an additional $600 in there from the federal government into their unemployment. And then, of course, I'll let you to speak to whether there's additional links from the employment department.
That's 600 per week?
Correct.
So is your question asking if we have links that provide alternative routes for folks who maybe haven't filed their taxes because they don't meet the income threshold to
Exactly, yes.
Necessary? To be honest with you, I don't know off of the top of my head. It's definitely something that I can get back to you on. I do know that our quality info page has a COVID-19 specific page that'll also direct you to the Oregon Employment Department's page to give information to those who are applying for UI claims and that other information. But in regards to federal taxes, that's something that's a little bit out of my purview as the county economist.
Well, I know I have forgotten where to find that link myself. And as I see all of these very recent and stunning numbers, I'm reminded the more that we can help folks get avenues to resources, the better off they will be and the better off we will be as a larger community. So I'll have to hunt that down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Can you share with us, this is Roy Rogers again, can you share with us what the current unemployment rate is in Oregon as well as Washington County? Do you have any number? Are you?
Yes. So the unemployment rate for March of 2020 in Washington County.
Oh, I mean April. Have you released April yet?
Oh, no, that won't be released until May 27th.
Okay, all right, thank you. I didn't know if there was something updated.
No problem. The data that I referenced in my slide was released at 10 a.m. today. So it's the most current that we have.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Brandon. We look forward, well, I was about to say we look forward to your report in the coming weeks about the impact of the COVID-19 situation. But as soon as I completed that thought in my head, I thought, ooh, no, I'm not looking forward to that data. But nonetheless, we'll be looking forward to hearing from you and learning more from you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Take care,
Right, thank
stay
you.
healthy.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so next we will go to our remaining topic for today, and that is the legislative update. And we can see here, courtesy of Zoom, we have all members of the full government relations team, from Elizabeth, Jagjit Nagra, Aaron Doyle, and Paige Spence. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you.
So,
Yes, I have to wave large in order for you to see that I'm waving.
Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners, I'm now here with you as the Interim Director for Government Relations. Before we start this presentation, I want to let you know that, as Brandon actually noted, we held back on getting you that information because we wanted the most recent information. I worked on the PowerPoint for you yesterday afternoon, and I submitted it, and then 10 minutes later got new information. I updated it, and then now I have different information for you. So the good news is it's more information, right? So we'll have more clarity, but some of the slides are now irrelevant. Having said that, I also thought I was clicking the slides myself, and so I put I'm not sure how they're going to come up, because I thought they were going to come up one line at a time, so we're on this adventure together. So go ahead, let's move to our first slide.
This adventure is not contagious.
So today you'll hear from mainly myself and Jagjit Nagra, although the whole team is here, so if you have any questions about the particulars of a portfolio, we have our folks ready to go. In the state updates, you'll hear about the emergency board convening and about the executive order. My apologies, I failed to put that up there. The emergency board convening is one of the areas where we have a lot more information than we did yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock or whatever that was. Federal updates. I'm going to be mainly talking about the CARES Act. And then I want to give you an update on the funding package 3.5, which I, as of 11:30, got a lot more information about. And a bit about the SMART funding, which is a proposal, and then opportunity for questions. In an effort to watch time, we will try to keep this to about 20 minutes of presentation and give time for questions. So Jagjit, I see you're not wearing your ball cap, but I still recognized you. You're up.
We can move to the next slide, please.
Oh, so yes, you're gonna have to click, sorry. I didn't know, yeah.
Is
Yeah,
there
go ahead,
anything
yeah,
else?
thanks.
Yeah. Let's just go back. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So, Chair Harrington, Commissioners, I'm Jagjit Nagra, Government Relations Manager for Washington County. Good to see you all looking healthy. So yesterday afternoon, late afternoon, Government Relations received an update that the Oregon State Legislature will be convening an e-board meeting this Thursday, the 23rd at 10 a.m., which is great news. This is going to be a one-day affair. At this point, we don't have any information about testimony, about input. It seems as though most of it is fairly pre-baked at this point. An agenda was released yesterday, and that agenda basically has 11 items on it. And earlier this afternoon, I sent you an email that kind of gives you a little bit deeper dive on each of those 11 functional areas that the agenda has on it. So in terms of money, the e-board is poised to spend $30 million of the available $50 million in general fund. And just as a quick reminder, considering we just heard from our Washington County, our Oregon State Washington County economist, the next revenue forecast will be released May 20th. And so we're expecting, everybody, is expecting significant declines there. And so we're also hearing that the next special session will take place after that. And just as a reminder, this emergency board is different from an upcoming special session, assuming that actually takes place. And so that's the information that we have for now. Government Relations will obviously be tracking the entire proceedings on Thursday morning. We have a call this afternoon with our county partners in AOC to determine if there's any more details that we have in terms of testimony or input. Obviously, we would like to have Washington County priorities be advanced there. But I think that a lot of the good work that we've been doing with our weekly updates with our legislators are going to be carried forward with us there, because I know Susan McLean, who's been an active participant in our weekly calls, is on the committee for this particular e-board convening. So I think we're in good shape there.
And I would also note that Senator Steiner Hayward has had staff available on that weekly call as well, which is important.
Now, if we can move to the next slide. And so this is just another reminder of the executive order that was in fact signed last week. This gave us the quorum flexibility that we were looking for in case a commissioner was ill due to COVID and we still needed to advance business. It also asked that meetings be conducted either telephonically or in a video-based capacity. But if it is done in person, that all social distancing precautions be taken as we're doing. So that's good. Next slide. The executive order, like I said previously, does not actually have a budget extension written into it, but it does give flexibility around delays or any sort of compliance issues that are related to COVID-19. So that's welcome news as well. Next slide, please. And then in terms of the budget process, in terms of budget meetings, notices, these should all be done telephonically and video-based. And if required, then again, social distancing should be put in place for these types of proceedings as well. And so this just allows us to make sure that everything is moving forward despite the pandemic. Again, in your email, you have a little bit more deeper dive on each of these, and I'm always available to take questions.
Great, and Judge, when you get it done with today's meeting, you'll have a chance to look at the email that has a lot more detailed information. Some of that information is somewhat embargoed from AOC, which is why we're not putting it on the record here, but you'll get a sense of what we're going to be working with our colleagues on this Thursday. I'll go ahead and move into the next slide, which is the CARES Act, and you can, just go ahead and fill the slide there. So the good news is I have more information than what we have here. So what we know about the CARES Act is that the certified jurisdictions, which are those 500,000 and above, will receive up to the percentage of their state population out of the entire bucket given to the state. And you can, there's I think one more line on that slide. What I know now, as of today, is that the city of Portland actually received their disbursement yesterday. They did get their full amount that they were expecting to receive. Multnomah County has not received theirs yet, and I've been in touch with our federal lobbyists, and we've been in touch with the Treasury Department via email, tracking down our certification to make sure there's nothing else they need from Washington County. It's hard to know what order they're doing this in. I would like to assume we're going to get the quote-unquote full amount based on our population proportion, but we just don't know. The certification for Washington County was submitted last Wednesday, and when I know more, I've been sharing it with Steve Rhodes and John Wheeler. So next slide, and I think there's 3 or 4 items. Of course, the other question that everybody's asking is not just how much we're getting, but how we can use it. It is unusual to be this far along in a funding package and not have any rules yet from the federal government. but nothing about this process has been usual, and so we are all just being nimble, which is my new favorite word. Here's what we know we can't spend it on, which seems like some better information. These funds cannot be used to cover revenue losses, only qualified expenditures. I think it's also important, I know Mr. Rhodes has shared this concern, that we're concerned about how this can be used with current FTE who have been reassigned to new duties under COVID-19. What I can say is I recall a conversation, sorry, maybe it was just this morning, about the need to increase FTE for replacement staff. There is no question that those will be covered. However, as you can see, the deadline is covering through just December of 2020. So if those folks needed to stay on longer, there would be an extension we would need to seek of some sort. Our understanding is that the guidance will come on the 24th, which is this Friday. I do know we were expecting allocation on the 24th. We know they're obviously going out sooner. So that is probably the least satisfying amount of information you've had about this kind of money. I will provide the answers to, if you can go to the next slide, I think there's 4 clicks. So is there any distribution to cities or partners in Washington County that is required by Section 5001 of the CARES Act? And the answer is no, which is the short answer, of course. The longer answer is that we have no obligation to provide funds to our jurisdictions that live within Washington County. And I believe, I'm not sure if it was actually presented, but I know that there was a letter that was referenced, or a letter that has been drafted by various organizations asking the governor to please release some of the disbursement going to the state to some of the local governments that are not direct disbursement jurisdictions. The second longer answer is there may be additional state and local funds coming. I do have more information on that. And I also have information about a proposal that came out yesterday morning. So why don't we move to the next slide and I'll take some questions, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For the second long answer,
Yeah.
would those additional dollars be going to the jurisdictions that are less than 500,000, or that's not clear either?
Well, I've got 2 answers for that, and if it's okay, we'll do the CARES Act, and then I'll answer that, because
Okay.
I've got new information that's not even on the slides yet. Breaking news.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Maybe
Chair,
at the very end, you can tell us which emails that we've received from you we can delete and which ones we should.
yeah, I mean, I feel Kathy and Chuck and Anna have gotten so many emails from me saying, okay, ready to go. Oh, no, wait, delete that one. Here's it. Wait, no, not that. So, yeah, it has been trying to, at some point last night, I just stopped updating, so you'll see that.
I would like to say that my ability to consume all of that from time to time is not nearly as nimble as your ability to generate the up-to-the-minute information.
Well, and you know, every
So
time it
hats
seems like
off
we're
to
having the
you.
best final info, and then 20 minutes later, we have the new best final info. And so, yeah, so thank you for your patience with communication. So Chair Harrington, you had pre-submitted these questions, and I wanted to acknowledge them without giving you any answers. So the first question is, are we going to get reimbursed for WashCo staff who have been reassigned? The answer basically is we don't know. And let me be really clear about this. I'm talking just about the CARES Act. I know that Marnie and the EOC has gotten money through the CDC and the state for various duties that are being performed. So I'm talking only within the boundaries of the CARES Act. The answer is I don't know. Will there be a COVID expanded workforce, or will COVID expanded workforce be reimbursable? I can answer that yes. So anybody who is not currently budgeted for Washington County who will have to come on to cover duties related to COVID-19 will be reimbursed. And again, we're not calling it reimbursement because it sounds like we're going to get the money dispersed in a package, and then we have to justify how we're spending it, is what it sounds like it's going to be. So that is different.
The word we use, justification.
That's the word I'm
I'll
using
wait
as
till
of
Thursday.
1:45 today. Yeah, so I'll let you know what word we're using on Friday when we get the rules from the Treasury.
I'll wait till Monday.
Yeah,
So
but the fact that the city of Portland
the
got their
rules.
full disbursement in one fell swoop leads me to believe we're then gonna spend the money and then receipt it like I'm not sure. So,
Can I ask how many people does number 2 apply to? How many have we expanded our workforce to cover that?
Marnie, I know, is watching, but I don't think she is on. Is there somebody else? Oh, hi, Marnie.
Wait. You have to come up to a mic, sorry. It's not as quaint of a room, so the sound doesn't carry the same.
Sorry, I was saying I don't have that answer off the top of my head, but for example, isolation and quarantine, the estimates from our national association was we would need 180 FTE for isolation and quarantine in Washington County for 6 to 12 months.
That was the 30 per.
30 per 100,000,
Yeah,
yes.
per 100,000.
Yeah.
But to date, you've pretty much, the whole EOC has, and all of the work
Yeah.
that you've been doing has been primarily taking current staff and reassigning them,
Yes.
as opposed to hiring new.
Well, that's what I thought too. So I was
Yes.
thinking, okay, we're being efficient about all of this, but unfortunately.
That's not reimbursable.
We're getting.
Right.
Or it feels
Well,
like it
not-
might not be.
Not through CARES.
Yeah, not necessarily, even CARES. And that's why I'm waiting for the regs, because the people are not doing the job that we
Budgeted
budgeted
them
for
to
them
do.
to do. And I think we have a valid argument with
Yes.
the feds over that. I've been through this before with
Yes.
federal rules. And so I'm not ruling that out. I mean, it doesn't look good, but I'm not ruling it out because I think we have a very valid argument to make on a lot of the people. They're not doing their regular job.
Well, and that definitely, when we lived through H1N1, which was a different county and state, but that definitely applied to H1N1 because staff were pulled from their normal duties, which they're not paid to do, so.
Which is one reason why we're reliant upon how you put in the new the new personnel rules with the job code categories so that you could track who was doing what in an
Yes.
effort to address the COVID needs. So
We're
you've done a
tracking.
great job of that data, putting that data structure in place. And now we have the course of time to finish up.
I think that'd be a great little research project for someone in county council. That'd be kind of fun, esoteric thing that you can
Yeah.
really get
In your
your
spare
kind of
time.
hands
Nothing to
and
do, right?
dig around in for, I think,
We'll wait till we get the rules out and then we'll do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, but if you don't have rules, you can always make up your own rules. I mean, there's,
Okay.
sometimes there's some creative lawyering here. Yeah.
We'll know more next Tuesday, or we'll hear more next Tuesday.
And so if there are not any other questions about the CARES Act in particular, there are two other, well, one in particular piece of legislation I'd like to talk about that's finishing negotiations now, and a third that was proposed, and then I know the chair has some items. So, okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Great. So the next two slides were accurate as of yesterday afternoon, although actually I think I did an update this morning once, and then at 11:30 information changed. These are the negotiations that were happening over the weekend in an effort to replenish the PPP fund that so quickly was sent out, dispersed. I'm not so worried now about the next two slides, so why don't we just move through them because they are not county-related money per se. Here's what we found out, though. On number 4, and I have just a summary of this, so I'll just read it. In the $25 billion for testing, we were surprised to see $11 billion added for state and local governments, or excuse me, they don't say governments. State, localities, territories, and tribes to develop, purchase, administer, process, and analyze COVID-19 steps, scale up laboratory capacity, trace contacts, and support employer testing. So that was a big, big surprise. It is not clear, as you might imagine, this legislation hasn't been written yet, it's just been negotiated. And so we don't even have word on paper to go look at and try to understand what they mean by this. It's not clear if this will be a federal program that the dollars will be sent down to, or if it'll actually be another round of disbursement directly to state and local governments to cover these kind of costs. What's good about this was there was an expectation there would be absolutely $0 for state and local governments in this negotiation. So this is a big surprise and very good news. I'm looking at two different things on my screen now, including an email from Van Scoyoc, who, by the way, have been just tremendous partners as we are working through all this information. And what he's saying, what Steve Palmer is saying as of, again, 11:30 when we got this news, is they expect passage by the end of this week, and money may take 2 to 4 weeks before it's sent out. And again, we assume somewhere in that timeframe would be some kind of rules telling us how it can be used, how it's going to be dispersed, et cetera. But that's good news. I had noted to Marnie that this was happening.
Remember the state figure, perhaps Elizabeth?
1.65 to 1.8 billion.
There you go. It says right there, near the last paragraph.
Minus anything disbursements to the local jurisdictions.
Yeah, okay. That please consider sharing some of that with local governments that are specifically not called out for in disbursements. So I know Lane County, a whole host of cities have already talked about this letter to sign on. Clackamas County's commission has discussed this, and they're preparing to sign on. The Multnomah County Board is meeting today, just as we are, to consider signing on to this. So,
My comments are, I'm in favor. Is it a sign-on, or is it coming on our letterhead with your signature?
well, that is unclear to me at the moment. We can do it both ways.
I would recommend that that's exactly what I was going to recommend, that we put it on our letterhead, you sign it, and then if we need to sign on something, I would do that as well. It's just fair.
I think that's a really good idea. I think that we can, avoid some bad feelings down the road. I'm not sure that we get, it's usually the situation where you don't necessarily get any kudos for doing the right thing, but you certainly will get slapped around for not doing the right thing, so we all want to avoid that. The other comment I want to make just a moment ago is that I didn't have any more questions, not because I don't have lots of questions, but it's sort of like there's really no point in trying to pin down something that can be pinned down right now, so.
I think that's right.
Good point.
I think until we have the rules,
Yeah.
it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I just add a suggestion on this letter? You may already have this on track, but if we could copy this after we finished it to each of the mayors in the county?
Sure, they're already working on it.
But I mean, showing that our letter has gone.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Yeah.
Happy to
None
do
of
it.
which are cities of 500,000 or better, so they probably have some interest in.
5 of them.
Commissioners Treese and Willie, what are your thoughts?
I was just reflecting on what you had said, Mr. Rhodes, and I think, we should all be CC'd on that, including the mayors. What do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what
Yeah.
you said? Okay,
Yes.
I thought you meant just advise them that it went out, but you're actually CCing them on the letter itself.
Yes,
Perfect.
because I've had managers talk to me about allocations from us to their city, so I think it's
Got it. Thank you.
good to show positive.
Commissioner Willie? Okay, so thumbs up for everybody. That's on 1 of 2. Number 3, let me give you the context. We have a memo from Aaron Doyle of the Government Relations team on a proposal relative to the gas tax. So what the context of this is that we know in our global economy, Russia and Saudi Arabia specifically have been having a price war for several months now. And the price of oil is pretty darn low. In fact, one of the headlines yesterday was in the negative pricing range. It's a little hard for me to get my head around.
That's in the investment side of things. That the real, I just saw it, price of oil is $11.45, which if you remember way back in the heydays, it was a heck of a lot more than that.
That's right.
So what is driving that quite frankly, is the lack of demand. Nobody's driving right now, so there's inventories all over the place. Nobody wants it. So,
But they've also been having a price war and getting it out on the market.
Yeah,
Before we had this COVID-19 thing, they were already doing battle. So we have some historically low.
If you're yawning, you should mute.
We have some historically low gas prices. And with that have come some proposals along with the effects of COVID-19 to look at accelerating the adoption of higher gas taxes, which the timing of it would be very helpful to all counties and road funds. So given that context and the request that at the Tri-Chairs meeting that we consider such a proposal, the government relations team, specifically Aaron Doyle, has put this memo together. So that's the context. Aaron, you are really close to all the facts.
Well, facts are scarce and hard to find at this point in time in anything related to COVID. So I do want to clarify that the price, sorry, my computer did something weird. The price of oil does not impact the gas tax revenues. That was the thing that I had to clear up yesterday. And it is the lack of demand within the state that is driving down the gas tax revenues. So the assumption coming from that is that once the stay-home order is lifted, that means that the demand will come back and people will be willing to pay. But what the price does to impact the thought process about what's being proposed, and this is all context, is that with the price of oil going down so quickly and that being reflected in market prices as well, there's more flexibility in what a consumer may or may not be willing to pay at the pump once they come back and are driving more often and are, but before the price of oil kicks back up and then raises it to the levels we saw in January or traditional summer months. So one of the things that we are still trying to get a hold of is figuring out exactly how much we are losing in gas tax revenues. But Ruth and Stephen have done some analysis pulling from the ODOT's work, which was done at the very beginning of COVID's impacts on gas prices, but they're assuming about a 40% loss in gas tax revenues. So in 2017, there was a proposal, was included in the transportation package to routinely increase the gas tax to pay for more and more of the projects that were identified in that House Bill 2017 process. And an idea has been floated in that Tri-County Chairs meeting that maybe we should take the last two incremental upticks for a total of an additional 4 cents per gallon until we see recovery happen, so that instead of seeing 40% declines, maybe we'll see slightly less. And all of this is very fuzzy right now as far as what the specifics of the proposal would be, and also very politically complicated. We haven't even begun the conversation about where everyone else is sitting with this proposal. Every county commission is going about. My understanding from other government relations folks is these conversations are at their very nascent stages. So what we're getting, what I would like to hear is a temperature check of the board about whether or not pursuing this type of policy and starting to grow that outreach and look at sideboards that might be appropriate to make sure that we aren't hampering anything moving forward, what the board feels about that, because I do think that we as recipients of a portion of that gas tax represent one of 4 of the largest counties with the largest gas sales. So we get particularly hard hit when there's loss of state shared revenues through this program. So I think I just want a sense of where this board is, what your feelings are on pursuing this as a potential policy option to start having conversations around with those that would also be impacted, both on the user side as well as on the local government side and on the state side, about feasibility, political, what would it take to get there, and to see if we could pursue that during the short session as a temporary legislative reprieve to kind of save some of those revenues that both the state, counties, and cities all depend on for road maintenance and road project development. And with that, I'll turn it back to you guys.
I don't know if the camera could pick up what my body language was during the conversation, but I was just trying to get verification that the memo was indeed just 1 pages and not 2 page. So it
Yes.
was just 1 page.
Yes, sorry, you were very tiny on my screen.
Yeah, I could tell
I'm
from,
looking.
from the even smaller screen we have. So, but I didn't want that to be perplexing anyone. So I really appreciated your putting this together, because as the question was initially posed to me, it sounded like, something to ponder. But you did a very nice job of reminding me and us all that the House Bill 2017 negotiations were and proposal were very carefully constructed to weigh and balance different considerations, and that any changes to that at this time would involve political capital and the need to manage the complex dynamic tension that we have through really still a very cloudy picture of what the next months are going to bring here in our state. So while on the surface, I think the concept sounds simple, I think we need to, my preference at this stage is a wait and see approach and go from there. But that is just one person of five's opinion.
Chair, if I may, really quickly, some of those give and takes were related to accountability measures. And I had to get a refresher from someone who's a little more intimately detailed. And there's some reporting requirements that are on local governments related to that, showing how we're using the funds, but also making sure we're abiding by some contracting provisions. So those two things, it's very difficult to measure up if we're meeting those accountability standards. So there's some possible, if it is temporary, ways to ameliorate some of those accountability concerns if it is a short-term increase. So there's ways to work in the system, I think.
Well, what I heard from our chair was it's not off the table. I would say it's definitely, from my point of view, it's not off the table. In the past, I've often kind of been puzzled why people get so worked up about a 1 or 2 cent tax increase on gas when you look at the market fluctuations over the course of any given year. We're talking about 15, 20, 30, 40, maybe even $1 plus fluctuations in the market. I mean, the oil and gas industry is infamous for being extraordinarily volatile. And 1 year, and some business cycles, it's way up, and then it takes big crashes. So it's often been puzzling to me why people get that worked up about the relatively modest, almost in all cases, across the states for gas taxes, while they don't seem to get too worked up about, or not as much worked up about, these enormous market fluctuations. So for me, to summarize, it's not off the table, and I think we should definitely take a look at that.
I'd be in favor. I've always argued that the gas tax, user tax, we should look at it, and 4 cents is not a large amount of money. I understand, having sat in numerous meetings, how complex this is and so many different parties and all of the issues that they face. The only question I had about it, and I'd be in favor of moving on it, was is the package the same, or is there going to be some distribution difference? We've always had that argument of what the percentage is to county, cities, and state. We've kind of settled on that. I assume that there's no tinkering with the formula for this 4 cents, but if things stay the same, I don't have a problem.
Aaron, would you remind me if in HB 2017, was there a different phase-in process for the rural areas on the gas tax than in the metro area?
No, because House Bill 2017 was a statewide transportation package,
Right.
and these dollars were very clearly for transportation services and going to be spread across the state. There was no regional differences that I recall occurring on this. The regional phase-in that you might be thinking of is on the various carbon bills. That's where that concept came from. But in House Bill 2017, it was a statewide, and there's statewide compliance for local governments related to those reporting requirements that I discussed earlier.
I think there might have also been a difference with some of the transit tax money that was attached to 2017 for rural. But anyway, my point is this have a different impact in a metro area than it would in the rural areas, is what I'm bringing up.
I would imagine that it's more dependent on gas sales. So the impact in the metro region would be based on our gas sales, less than, so folks who drive into Oregon from the border might see that 4 cents increase is something different, but I don't think that there's necessarily a differentiated impact to rural communities versus local communities, because that the way the gas tax is split up, as Commissioner Rogers alluded to, is, there's a percentage that goes to the state, percentage that goes to the county, percentage that goes to the city. Provided that those percentages stay in place, all the money comes into the state and then gets pushed back out to each area based on formulas that I don't yet completely understand, to be frank. And if Stephen is there from LUT, or Ruth might be able to answer that question a little bit more coherently. But overall, it would be seen statewide with not a lot of varying impact. It might just be a question of politics at that point being different, thinking about who the users are of the gas tax and who drives and what their
and the distances they drive and those things. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Scouten there. 4 cents a gallon's 80 cents a tank, and I've never understood the heightened sensitivity to raising gas tax a penny or 2 cents. And so to me, to accelerate this 4 cent increase at this particular time makes a lot of sense. And I would like us to consider moving on and agreeing with that proposal.
Well, that's the $100,000 question. What is the proposal, right? I think, go ahead, Aaron.
I think that, and obviously Stephen's there to properly answer the question if you'd like to hear from him first.
Who's him?
Stephen.
Stephen.
Okay, he's here at the table. Yes, he's here at the table.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Hi.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi. So, essentially it's predicated on fuel sales. So for Washington County, I don't have exact numbers here in front of me, but I think that we are probably talking in the more than $1 million range per year, perhaps a little bit more. So I think, certainly as the department that would benefit primarily from the additional revenues, I would strongly support moving forward with it. We have a lot of great projects in the pipeline. Our costs, as we mentioned earlier, continue to increase. And so this could be a way to generate some additional revenues when it's needed. On the other hand, certainly understand this is potentially a heavier lift politically. So.
Well, go ahead, Aaron.
And to the political lift, I think it's very much, as you kind of alluded to just before this, Chair Harrington, what the bill or package or a concept actually ends up looking like will very much determine how big of a lift it is and how many stakeholders we can get on board. I also think it's highly dependent upon how the rollout goes and what people's feelings are about returning back to work and what the economy is doing in their region, which is again where some of those regional differences might come up. I do think a lot of local leaders are starting to look at recovery and thinking about things like transportation projects as a means to open the economy back up faster, get some jobs underway, but are also sensitive to distances driven and user fees. But I think this is just one of the ways in which we're trying to be creative in how we problem solve some of these state shared revenue downfalls that we're seeing across the board. So I think my plan would be is once if we decide if more stakeholders decide they want to move forward with this and start asking the questions of other folks who would be impacted, what the political fight is going to look like, what concessions need to be made, that would define the package. And then we would come back for a further conversation with the board to make sure that we haven't written the package in a way that doesn't actually truly help or feel like a lift you want us to be making as a county.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think the idea of considering raising the gas tax in light of where we are today could make sense. But I think we've got to figure out what is happening with somebody's Siri is deciding to talk.
She has a gas tax position.
Siri wants to weigh in on this.
So I lost my train of thought there over Siri. No, I think the idea, there's a germ of an idea here, but I think we've got to see how the legislature wants to get legs on this and take it from there. It really still is at the idea phase as opposed to on a legislative concept sheet of paper. And that's where I want us to be nimble, to say, yeah, that is an idea. That could be beneficial for a whole host of varieties, as opposed to us pushing the idea that, you know, we really need you, state legislators, to move on this right now, in light of a whole lot of other economic impact things that are on their plate. So that's where I'm coming from.
And I think to the chair's point, it made a reminder that this Thursday there'll be the emergency board, which will deal with COVID-19 related issues. We expect the governor will have an emergency board catastrophic disaster session after the revenue forecast on May 20th. And so even if this gets traction and we move forward, there's a lot of time between now and when we have an opportunity to decide how to balance out the needs of the county.
Excellent point. Great. So can you guys be watching that for us, and in one of our updates in, by the middle of May or so, see what sort of indications there are? And
absolutely.
Check in. That'd be great.
And so, sorry, if there are no other questions, I just had two quick things to finish up on, which was.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you to Jajit, who sent me an article that says that today the Senate will be voting on the COVID-19 3.5 at 4 p.m. There was a tweet by the president that does say that after I sign this bill, we'll begin discussions on the next legislative initiative with fiscal relief to state and local governments for lost revenues. Now, obviously it's a tweet, but work does seem to get done by tweet from him, so that is an update there. The final thing I wanted to say is I just want to really compliment the government relations staff. It has really been like we are in legislative session, but that we're in legislative session both back in DC and here at the same time. And we have morning meetings every day just to organize who's going to be doing what that day. And it does feel like we are kind of 24/7 trying to get information. So we appreciate your patience as we try to push out info and then correct it every 15 minutes. If we were to wait a week, I feel like there'd be a lot of stuff lost as you see the evolution. You are always welcome to tell us to send less information, though. So we're just trying to strike that balance for you. But thank you to Aaron, Jajit, and Paige. I think it's been a pretty busy couple of weeks for us.
I would say thank you very much to you and the team. I know that all four of you are on the case. I really look forward to these Tuesday sessions, and you're providing us with whatever summary memos we need in order to come prepared to be thoughtful about the questions and considerations for this meeting. I, for one, have trouble following the blow by blow from each of the different departments. So that's where it's been a little rough for me. But I know your intent is to give us the best available information for us to consider. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that too. I think the GR team it's a great addition, and I really appreciate all the information you give. And I think we all understand that you're moving in the fast lane constantly. So just giving us information and then giving us more information is fine with me.
Different information.
I like keeping
The
up with that.
new best final info. That's awesome.
As they say, if you don't like the weather in Oregon right now, wait 20 minutes, and that's the way it is with the GR team. It's like, okay, if you don't like that, let's wait 20 minutes. We'll see what new things come up. So,
Yeah, I would echo the great work. I really appreciate what the GR team is doing. Put a little kudos in for our board. I think that was a good call on our board's part to increase our staffing and to improve our staffing level at the government relations side.
Anything else on ledge update? Yes, great work. I hope all four of you are seeing the thumbs up and hearing the thanks and the accolades. You're doing great. And even though the middle of May and the end of May seems far away, there's only 6 more weeks between now and the end of May. And we've learned so much over these prior 6 weeks that it just goes to say what a phenomenal job all 4 of you have been doing. So thank you. Keep up the great work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I could ask one question about this information
The
you provided.
rolling agenda,
Yeah.
we were provided a new rolling agenda today. Steve, is there anything out of the CAO's office you would like us to note?
I don't think so, other than if you haven't seen the parking lot, you might note that, which is all the items that we've pulled, if I can find it now. It's on the, well, where, oh, there it is. It's in May, after the May page. All the items that we've pulled just to slow things down based on the COVID. But we are, as it's beginning to look like we can now run meetings virtually with this governor's executive order, we will probably start moving these things back on, because we're going to try to get our boards and commissions back up and running in May. If IT can help us with the technology, which I believe they can, but that's the goal. So we're shooting for that, which will say a lot of these, which were boards and commissions appointments, need to get back onto the schedule. So we'll be working on that. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow to start looking at how we can do that.
I would just like to highlight a couple of dates as well. We will be receiving, or the proposed Washington County budget will be available, published on Monday, the 27th. So that's next Monday. The Clean Water Services budget will be released on May 22nd. So that's a change. We're not having that budget committee meeting on May 8th. Rather, that budget meeting will follow as well, I believe, on Friday, June 5th. Let's see, do I have that right? Have I internalized that? Yes. Hey, looky there. I know for myself, my vacation as of July 1st is very much in question. We are still hoping to move forward with our CAO interviews on
We
May
have-
28, 29 as possible dates.
Yeah, we have them two places in May and 28 and 29, and then June 18 and 19.
Yep. Yep. So while we've been pretty immersed on COVID for the last 6 weeks, with other more normal business that we really had to make sure we moved on, we're starting to see more things stay on our work session and our business agenda because we just can't put it off any longer. Plus, we need to get rolling on the budget, so we'll be exercising that side of our brains here for a number of weeks. The second town hall that we had planned for early May, can't remember if it was the 4th or 5th, is also canceled.
The 4th.
So, we'll see what happens. I am very confident that we will continue to learn more over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And that hopefully, I really do hope that before the end of May, we'll be able to wrap our heads a little bit more around what might summer be like, right? What might those weeks to Labor Day look like? And go from there. Are there any other questions about the rolling agenda or what may transpire?
Madam Chair, could I add one item on the rolling
course.
agenda that has not made it on there yet? Is we added a budget committee meeting on the 18th of May. Now, all of you got that from Kathy, because I think the way we've got it staged now with the work that Echo Northwest is doing for us, our first budget committee meeting, we're going to have presentation on that material. And that will then mean we'll need more time to get through the things that we would normally do at our first meeting. So we just haven't gotten that on this calendar yet.
Yep. So in summary, it looks like we're meeting on May 12th, May 14th. Yep. And also the 18th, you said?
Yes,
And then we'll have a public hearing on the 28th still?
27th.
27th.
That got shifted because of the CAO interviews.
Oh, perfect sense. Yes, makes perfect sense. All righty. Great.
Clean water services hearings, 5th of June? June 5th? Yeah.
Okay. Another big milestone we have coming up as a community is Election Day on May 19th.
Oh, I didn't know
No
about
kidding.
that, okay.
So I know various forums are going on right now, including under Zoom. And I know our organization is poised in the new office over on Aleclec, the second election, but the first presidential year. That they'll be road testing those new procedures. And looks like Elizabeth has something to add. You just need to come up to the mic.
My apologies. Elizabeth Mazzara Myers again, this time still interim government relations director. Just sharing a note that Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer was giving a floor speech right now and confirmed that the commitment Trump gave both Schumer and Pelosi on revenue loss for local governments is a commitment to be implemented in phase 4.
Phase 4, which might be smart.
Which could be the smart proposal.
Okay. Yep. Like I've said before, I don't count those chickens until the ink is dry on the paper. So don't count those dollars. Yeah, there you go. I don't count on it until the ink is dry on the paper with regard to legislation, so.
Or
Anything-
that they're hatched.
Yes. Anything else for the good of the order?
Not orange.
No. All righty, well, we don't usually have an adjourn motion for work session, so we'll adjourn today's work session.
I want to know her position on the gas tax.
Yeah. I know she was.